Nova Kooks.
Hello. We need just a few moments of your time.
Let's gleam the cube. Let's gleam it.
Oh, my stomach just replied as well.
Oh, what world?
Hey, Tum Tum. What's the expression? Jumping at the bit, biting at the bit? Chomping at the bit.
Who knew we could talk about Gleaming the Cube for an hour?
I think we were just gleaming the cube.
I think we gleaned that.
Yeah. Let's get radical.
Yeah.
Totally radical.
That will be the intro.
It's a gleamer.
Little hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Oh, baby.
Welcome, listener. You're listening to Nova Kooks. We are four East Coast surfers that don't take ourselves too seriously when it comes to surfing or other things, hence our name, the Nova Kooks. In this podcast, you will hear us talk about surfing on the East Coast of Canada and hear some funny stories from our inexperience along the way. This podcast isn't just a surf podcast. In fact, it's more of a bi-weekly discussion about all the things that we are interested in. Our favorite podcasts are those that make you feel like you're hanging out with friends. So enjoy hanging out with us as we explore personal growth, adventure, and the world around us, including pop culture and other topics. While our common interest is surfing, we will of course discuss it, but like surfing, sometimes it gets weird. Sometimes it's moderately comforting. So, let's get weird. Today's episode is a movie episode. Today we discuss the 1989 movie starring Christian Slater titled Gleaming the Cube. We have also included our new reoccurring segment where we give and/or discuss a surf tip. And of course, we will finish with a final question from Charles. Before we begin, I am Jared and I will be your host. I'm seated with Charles, Josh, and David. Hello.
Hello, Jared.
Hi.
Let's get radical.
I have several questions I want you to consider.
To start off today, our warm-up question is movie related. If you could see one movie again for the first time, what would it be and why?
I've put some deep thought into this.
Okay.
And I still come up with Back to the Future.
Nice.
Ooh, yeah.
Magical moment.
It's a good one.
Yeah. As much as I don't necessarily like to, I still get enjoyment when it comes on. I'll still watch it. Maybe not the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I still remember seeing it for the first time and just blown away by all aspects of it. Like that's my first magical sort of movie theater experience that like
you saw it in the theater.
Set me for life. I'm quite sure. I would have been really young, so I either saw the first one or the second one in the theater.
Yeah.
They kind of blend together. I'm pretty sure it was the first one because we didn't have a VCR. So
Yeah, I remember the second Back to the Future movie. I saw it first. And I remember being this is so cool.
Well, and that must be the case for me too, because the first one is 84 or 86.
I think maybe it's 85. It's somewhere within those 3 years.
It's either 84, 85, or 86. So I definitely wouldn't. You're right. I wouldn't have seen that in the theater. So I must have seen the second one in the theater and then been like hooked on the sort of magic of movies.
It's in 1985. Charles.
Well, it seems like the correct way to answer this question would be to say, I'd want to see The Sixth Sense again for the first time, because once you see that reveal, or you wanted to watch Empire Strikes Back again for the first time, not knowing that Darth Vader's Luke Skywalker's father.
What?
Man.
What? Spoiler alert.
Oh, man.
I got really confused. Just for the record, I saw a video a while ago and Darth Vader took his mask off and it was Luke Skywalker. I was like, oh, this is like some sort of like, this is like his shadow self.
It was a dream sequence.
Little dream sequence.
I'm not a Star Wars guy. It was confusing.
I was expecting it to be
James
Earl Jones, and it wasn't.
No, it wasn't James Earl Jones.
Anyway, sorry. Where were you going with that?
It was Zach Morris. I was like, what?
So that seems like maybe the best way to answer this, where you can experience that surprise or twist again. But back to Josh's answer there, I was a bit late to getting to a movie theater, but the first movie that I ever saw in a movie theater was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which I just loved seeing. And every time I watched that, no matter how many times I see it, it just brings me joy. And I made you all come watch it with me on my 40th birthday there.
There was a lot of joy that night.
Yeah.
A lot of joy.
But I remember my favorite movie is The Phantom of the Paradise, and the first time I ever saw that on VHS was the same day. It was the first time I saw This Is Spinal Tap as well, and I just remember like both of those movies just like blowing my mind and enjoying them so much. So if I could, maybe one of those, maybe the Phantom of the Paradise, it being my favorite movie, to experience it just without having seen it before would be a treat.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Bill and Ted was actually the first one I ever saw on VHS.
Oh,
I remember it because in all of the mysteries that exist around VHS tapes, there was a belief in my family that you couldn't rent a VHS, bring it home, and put it directly into the VCR because a cold tape should not be put in the VCR. It wasn't good for it.
Oh, wow.
So we brought this movie home, and there's like chips and stuff, and I'm like, can we just watch this movie, please? And we had to wait for the tape to warm up.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Did you rent the machine as well?
I think so. Well, Bill and Ted came out in what, 88?
89, I think.
Yeah, so we got...
Bring it home in that suitcase thing.
Well, no,
Do you
I
remember
think...
renting?
Yes, I
I
remember
think
renting
so. Bill and Ted would have been
VCRs.
out for a while before I saw it, and I think then we had. I think we got a VCR in '91, so I think it was the first tape we rented on our new VCR.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
On-screen programming. What a machine!
Yeah, I remember renting the machines, and I was not allowed to touch it.
Right, right.
It's like-
Stay away.
Yeah. That's funny.
A lot could go wrong.
about you,
Well,
David?
we're really throwing it back, and I think that really fits quite nicely. Touching on Star Wars, you definitely stole some, like not stole, but you touched on. I mean, to watch Star Wars again for the first time, to me, I mean, obviously there's a lot of nostalgia and science fiction and visual effects have come a long way, but to throw any of the original Star Wars movies back on now would be so fun. Back to the Future, you stole another one, top hit for me. I'm going to go with Ghostbusters.
Nice.
So we had a beta before VHS was beta.
I've never actually seen one of those.
And so my father worked for the YMCA, and they used to have these funny, he'd have to do presentations, and we had something called the Sony VidiMagic. And it looked basically like a 1 foot by 4 foot long cannon. And in the back, you could put in a Betamax tape. And I think it was like they used to do presentations on it, and you'd shoot it on the wall. Anyways, he got his hands on one, and it kind of stayed at our house. I'm not saying he took it from the YMCA. But anyways, we had the VidiMagic, and we basically had 3 tapes that we taped off the TV. Empire Strikes Back. So funny you touched on that. Back to the Future. Police Academy and Ghostbusters. So that was like my childhood. If I could go back to the basement and watch any of those again,
Any of those 4, those are
I would be
great nostalgic.
fired up. And it's so interesting that you guys touched on 2 of those, so I'm going to add a 3rd.
We had a beta machine. My father had a used furniture store, and it was probably by the time where the regular VHS was normal, but we had a beta machine, and I was amazed when he brought it home that you could tape things off television. But I remember I was just a kid at the time, and taping it was like the Muppets meet Sesame Street Christmas special.
Oh, yeah.
So they're all
That's
together,
like the Jim Henson
hanging
Family
out.
Christmas.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
But I had it taped, and I was
Fraggles were in it?
I was just amazed that I could just have something taped and rewatch it. And I mean, it must have drove my family crazy because I probably watched that 100 times.
Yeah. Well, all of those movies are just hitting all that nostalgia piece for me. And I think that when I first thought of this question and I started thinking about it, I did go back to all of those movies that made you love movies when I was a kid, which was all those 80s movies, like all the ones you guys just said. But I definitely do think an important piece to this is like the time machine. Like if I could rewatch the movie, it would also have to be back in that time. And for me, I loved all of your answers, but I'm going to go back to high school age, like the late 90s. I'm thinking Matrix. which is similar to that reveal, not knowing that reveal of what was going on, that it was the real world. And I also think about Fight Club, which was also a reveal as well. And those are the two movies that I think, but mine would be The Matrix, because I just remember when that came out, it broke our brains. We were like, wow, storytelling. This is so different than anything we've ever seen before.
Oh yeah, and the effects and everything.
And my group of friends, we went to that movie 4 or 5 times. Each time we found that somebody hadn't seen it, we were like, well, we gotta go again. And it was awesome. And I remember one of my friends, Craig, running in the hallway at high school and decided to run on the lockers. And he just screams, I'm in the Matrix. And he ran across the lockers and then fell and sprained his ankle. It was on crutches.
That ruined his summer.
Oh, man, it was hilarious.
That's great.
That was pretty fun.
Matrix, that's a good call.
That is a good call.
Yeah.
What is the definition of a reveal? I haven't used that expression for a movie before.
So like, well, like the reveal that Luke.
Oh, okay.
That Vader is Luke's dad. The
yeah.
twist, the reveal.
Oh, I see. Okay. Cool.
Sixth Sense has a reveal. Yeah. Matrix has a reveal that it's
Gotcha.
not that they're in a computer world.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what? I should actually go back and watch The Sixth Sense. I've only ever watched it once.
I only seen it once, but someone had spoiled the ending for me. But I still enjoyed it.
That's where spoilers. By the way, there's going to be lots of spoilers in this episode about Gleaming the Cube in a little bit. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's free on YouTube right now.
I feel like most of the audience is going to be like, what movie?
Yeah.
I have one 80s, 90s question for you first. Do you remember a VCR that came out that would edit out commercials for you? It could somehow sense the difference in frequency or something of a commercial, and it would pause the recording, monitor it, and fire back up when the show came back on.
Yeah.
It existed.
I remember hearing rumors of such a machine,
never had one.
And it was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, is we were really young when we were watching these movies, but we were watching them all from being like recorded by our parents on TV when all the swear words had been taken out or dubbed.
Yep.
They used to there's a company in Montreal that would play through the whole movie and dub out turn the F words into fricks or...
Well, the movie versions. There were always a movie, remember ASN?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we're being listened to globally. So ASN is a TV network here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Nova Scotia, in Atlantic Canada. They would play Lethal Weapon and beep out the swear words. They'd play I can't even think of what else.
But it's funny to think now, I can't show any of these movies to my daughter because I can't find that edited version.
Isn't there a sensory piece on streaming?
I don't think so.
I thought there was.
On this vein, can you think of a line that was edited in that was actually funnier than if they had have sworn? Because I've got one in the barrel.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was at the end of Die Hard 2. Do you know what it is?
Maybe. What is that?
Because I think he says yippee, but then it's something totally different. I can't remember what it was, but it was hilarious.
You're presenting it. Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon.
What? That's awesome.
In many ways superior.
Every time they said it, I would just crack up laughing. I was like, that's funnier than if he swore.
Next, please.
Okay, let's rewind to a time that skateboarding was still on the rise as a sport, where it seemed that skaters were only kids and street punks trespassing and riding boards in empty pools of the rich in LA and graffiti tagging the sides of buildings in empty parking lots. Enter Gleaming the Cube, which stars Christian Slater as Brian, whose adopted Vietnamese brother Vin is killed when he discovers that the shop he works in sends weapons to Vietnam instead of medications. To the police, it looks like suicide, but Brian knows better, so he skates off to investigate the murder himself. The movie Gleaming the Cube is a classic 80s movie that required no sequel and reeks of a movie that was slammed together in the writer's room where the execs were like, skateboarding is really cool now. Oh, look, Here's the story of illegal arms dealers from Vietnam. That'll do. So let's blend the two. The movie is also in other areas of the world called A Brother's Justice. It's also called Skate or Die, and it was released in the Philippines as Challenge to Win Again.
Which I think is a great name.
Yeah.
I read that. Yep.
It was directed by Graham Clifford, who went on to direct a ton of TV movies and a few TV episodes, including Twin Peaks. And it was written by Michael Tolkien, who wrote other films such as The Player with Tim Robbins.
Yep.
Changing Lanes with Samuel L. Jackson, and Deep Impact, which was oddly released around the exact same time as Armageddon, and it's pretty much the same movie without Bruce Willis and oil drillers.
I think you get Robert Duvall, though, was in it.
Robert Duvall, and I think Morgan Freeman was in Deep Impact
Okay.
too, and Elijah Wood.
Oh,
Yeah.
Fun fact about Samuel L. Jackson. If you say his name very fast and don't say his middle initial, you still say his full name. Samuel Jackson. Yeah.
I just did it in my mind.
Yeah. Samuel.
What made this movie so appealing, though, is the effort at the time to get the skateboarding shots right. It was the first film to star skateboarders and have pro skaters as the stunt crew as well. Former pro skater Stacy Peralta, originally from the legendary Zephyr skate team, was in charge of all skateboarding scenes, and the Bones Brigade did most of the stunts and also got to star as Brian's friends. Christian's skate double, there was more than one, but you can definitely pick out Mike McGill, because he does a McTwist at one part in the movie, and Rodney Mullen, who does amazing. We'll talk more about Rodney Mullen in a little bit, I'm sure, but he does amazing street skate, freestyle skateboarding. And Tony Hawk had a recurring role as Buddy, the Pizza Hut delivery driving friend that had access to the red Pizza Hut delivery truck, complete with the Pizza Hut roof decoration on top. Other skaters in the movie were Mark Gator Rogowski, Rich Dunlap, Eric Dressen, Lance Mountain, Mike Vallely, Chris Black, Ted Natis Kappas. Did I say his name right?
Oh, yeah.
Chris Borst and Steve Says. It also had Tommy Guillermo, who played a bigger role in it. And they were all members of the Bones Brigade, which was the Pal Peralta team, wasn't it? That was the Pal Peralta skate team. And what's really cool is this guy Christian Jacobs, who was also a skateboarder at the time. He I don't think he was part of the Bones Brigade, but he was also in that gang of skaters. He became the lead singer of the Aquabats, which is an amazing ska band where they used to wear wetsuits basically as they performed.
Oh, wow.
Did they really wear wetsuits?
They were like thin wetsuits with like black masks. They look kind of like the Phantom, like, you know, the superhero.
Imagine wearing your wetsuit at a show.
Yeah, these weren't like
brutal.
These weren't.
You'd lose 10 pounds.
I think they were more like just a rash guard material.
Yeah.
But they were awesome. The bass player of that band, I didn't know that he was from the Aquabats. When I was listening to the Aquabats back in high school, I had no idea who these guys were, but I knew that like they were from different, bands. They were like a super group, but I couldn't figure out who they were. But that guy, Christian Jacobs, also became the creator of the celebrated children's show Yo Gabba Gabba, and he played Gremick in the movie. So let's talk about the movie. Before we get into the actual movie for reference, I have a couple questions for you guys. So first, for me, I was always really into skateboarding from a young age. Though I lived in a rural Nova Scotia area with really cold winters, I could relate to this movie a lot through my skateboarding days, where though my skateboarding days were in the early mid-90s, which if you see the movie Mid-90s by Jonah Hill, that was almost like a perfect account for my youth, except the difference is that I was in a town that had more of a winter than LA. So
That was a good movie.
No, it
Dark, though.
captures that.
It was
time
dark.
very well. Yeah.
yeah, but that really, like, the hanging out at skate shops, finding places to skate, getting kicked off of places skating, sweaty, dirty, all the stuff, the parties, like that was really very identical to my youth. Yeah, maybe not as depressing an upbringing. Like, that kid had a hard go, but anyhow. But when it comes to like the time that was displayed in Gleaming the Cube, I can relate in a lot of ways. That was definitely a more bubbly version of the skateboarding world. And I think
Gleaming the Cube was?
Yeah.
Aside from the murder and
no.
weapons
No.
to Vietnam.
I'm talking about like the skateboarding aspect of all the kids having fun.
Yeah.
Like, it was a little bit more glossy than mid 90s as a movie. So David is the one that kind of really brought Gleaming the Cube back to me. I had seen it before, but didn't really connect to it. It kind of just got pocketed in other movies such as Rad, which was a BMX movie, which was of a similar ilk.
Great film.
Yeah. There were lots of these movies aimed at kids around this time, with these new growing sports on the rise. I believe there was like a rollerblade movie and stuff like that.
There was also one called Dirt Bike Kid, which I watched probably 25 times.
Nice.
Moving on, Charles, I wonder, as you used to skateboard a bit as a kid, did this movie ever enter your radar at the time it was released or when you were young, and could you relate to it in any way?
Yeah, so I would have started skateboarding probably in 1993 or 1994, so it would have been a couple of years after this year movie. Actually, the first deck that I had was a Steve Caballero Pal Peralta deck that I would have gotten I purchased from a friend who had like upgraded to like a smaller deck. So that's when I got into skateboarding, and basically there were some friends that knew about this movie, and we decided to rent it kind of for a laugh, like it was the cheesy skateboard movie. And my reaction to it then is kind of similar to my reaction to it now. But yeah, I would have been aware of it. I've seen it once before, but that was sort of like as far as my knowledge, like the 80s, like skateboard movie.
Dave, this movie was your suggestion for us to watch and talk about. And I know from the day we met that this was a classic for you. You even would play the song often. Can you talk about the movie and how it relates to you, nostalgia, etc.?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for humoring me with this movie selection. So I grew up in a very rural town, and we would just scratch and claw for any bit of skateboard storytelling, or anything. A magazine would come into town and we just would flock to it. We didn't have the internet. This is old school, like a tape would come into town and everyone would let's go listen to the tape.
Yep.
So but it being a rural small town, we skateboarded. We loved skateboarding, whether it was on the Walmart deck or whatever you could get your hands on. Mm-hmm. And when this movie came out, this was like, oh my goodness, Tony Hawk is in this. And we just zeroed in on, what is that skateboard trick? What is he wearing? Is that an earring in his ear? Is he wearing a glove on one hand? What is happening here? It was that, and there was a Bones Brigade movie, which I still think is hilarious. The Search for Animal Chin. Which
have you seen him?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen Animal Chin?
So Stacy Peralta also kind of was the brainchild behind that, and the Bones Brigade's in it. So really, what shaped my cultural and skateboarding aspirations was this movie.
Yeah.
And The Search for Animal Chin.
And it's funny you say that, because in researching for us recording this tonight, I saw so many people in comment threads talking about how Gleaming the Cube, everybody thought that Christian Slater was a pro skater, and Christian Slater's character made them go out and buy a skateboard, which I thought was really cool.
Well, the guy did look just like him. Like, I was like, is
the stunt doubles? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is he a skater? I didn't think he skateboards. Like,
right.
And when I was watching it.
Yeah, they were wearing Dave's wig.
And and just to let the viewer know, just to celebrate this moment, and to make up for the Halloween episode where I kind of wet blanketed the whole thing, I showed up today looking exactly like Christian Slater from the movie Gleaming the Cube.
I sent you pictures.
Yeah, I'll put it up on the Instagram.
Yeah. So basically, I look exactly like Christian Slater is what I'm trying to say.
You sound
doppelganger.
Yeah, you sound like him too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Josh, you weren't as into skateboarding. You've talked in the past about how you like appreciated the culture and everything. But you definitely do have a love for 80s action movies, and you love, like you just said, Rad and Dirt Bike Kid, which I had written down here. I was getting to you, man.
Oh, he listens.
It's all right.
He knows me.
Did this hit nostalgia for you in any way?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like,
we also like went, Charles, Josh, and I went on a huge Stallone binge, 80s movie binge. So I feel like the quality, the style was kind of similar, like the action pieces of this.
For context, for those that are listening, for COVID, we used Netflix Party when we couldn't get together.
Yeah.
And we started with Rambo First Blood, watched the entire Rambo series, and then just continued on with Stallone movies for...
The 80s ones, though, not like Expendables. Yeah.
Not the Expendables.
Yeah.
Not that it's a bad film. But we've continued that up until I think we watched another Stallone movie in August.
Lock Up, yeah.
We watched Lock Up in August. So that's 2020, summer of 2020.
We took a Kurt Russell's side.
We did take a sidestep for Kurt Russell. What was that, 1982
Captain
one?
Ron?
No, not that.
The Kurt Russell one?
Yeah.
Escape from LA?
No,
Or
the one where they were up north.
The Thing.
The Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Thing was intense. So, Gleaming the Cube. I enjoyed it. It took me a minute to get into it. There's a couple reasons. One is I have noticed with 80s films, there's some are really good quality. And you ask yourself, well, how is that comparable to this other movie made in the same year and you can hardly tell what the picture is? And that throws me off sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just...
Studio dollars, maybe?
I think it's just, budget was more apparent back then.
Yeah.
And you see it in different ways now. So it threw me off a little bit at the start of the movie, but there were so many things that caught my attention, like the shape of the skateboards. I remember that.
Yeah. I also think, sorry to go back for one sec, I also think that Spielberg and Lucas and some of those directors really had, they had money in their pocket, but they also had this ability to make film work for them. And they kind of created, they're the reason movies have evolved to what they are too, right?
Yeah. And then the film, it had that accelerated storyline. I was 15 minutes in and already the kid was dead.
Spoilers. Oh, now we know this.
Yeah. And then there was a point, and I would say it was, the movie's an hour and 40 minutes, and about an hour, it transitioned and it all made sense. And I wasn't questioning, why does he have a glove on? I was thinking, they're trying to hit every 80s stylistic cliche here. That's why he's wearing a glove. That's why his hair. That's why he's got the dangly earring. And then there was a chase scene and he was on his skateboard and he's cornering and dragging his hand and stuff. It's like, oh, this all makes sense. Of course, the glove, the board. Yeah. And it just opened up. And so from about an hour in, I was sold. I had completely transitioned and really enjoyed the latter half of the movie.
I agree, yeah. So that goes perfectly into what I wanted to talk about next. The critics' consensus of this movie was not good. It was a dud, hard dud. I think it played in over 400 theaters, I think it said somewhere. And it just wasn't really critically acclaimed. And I think, I don't know the actual scores on Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes, but they're not strong. But in the skate world, it's a 80s cult classic. Like people that skateboard, that it really resonated with, hold it up in regard with like the Back to the Futures, even some, yeah. And like Bill and Ted and stuff like that. They do, totally.
I'm with those people.
Yeah, it's like in the Christian Slater canon with like Pump Up the Volume and Cuffs. Like it's right up there.
It's 29% on the tomato meter,
Yeah.
but on the audience score, it's 69%.
Interesting.
So Dave, you love this movie. It
Yeah.
hits all your nostalgia. It makes
It
you
does.
feel like you're a kid again. Makes
Okay.
you remember riding around on your
It brought it all back.
Tony Hawk.
Brought it all back.
Yeah. I loved all of the skateboard stuff. It really resonated with me too. And I think, well, Charles, Dave, and myself, I think our first skateboards were all those Dominion style decks. Mine was not a Pal Peralta, although I wish that was part of my story. Mine was straight from Zellers.
That's the one I was thinking of when I said I remember the boards, and I wanted one. They were orange or they were purple or...
I had a
Yeah.
Volterra from Kmart or something. That was my first one.
I don't know what mine was, but it had a stubby nose to it and a
Oh, yeah.
big fat tail with a big plastic tail
Little
guard
bubble,
on it.
like a bubble thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it had
The brake
rails.
pad.
Yep.
It had the plastic rails
Oh,
on
yeah.
it. And it had, which Andy Anderson is bringing back hard, by the way,
Yeah.
which is great.
Love
and it
it.
had
The rails?
yeah. And it had it was white with blue and had this like guy, this neon green guy with a skateboard for the image. Pretty funny.
It brings it right back.
Yeah.
The skateboarding in this movie to me was like the skateboarding that I aspired to.
Yeah.
Like the opening scene when
Yes.
they're whipping around. I mean, they had access. They had access to the runway. Why wouldn't they? At John Wayne, John Wayne
Wayne.
International Airport.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand the beginning of the movie.
They're just
They're skateboarding.
How'd they get on a plane?
I have
Their buddy,
Okay.
who was taking flying lessons.
yeah, got them up in the
And
air.
needed to subsidize it with cash.
As I said, the beginning of the movie moved very quickly. So
I was confused as well. I was just like, why are they on a runway at the airport? Then it's like, of course, because they're going to go like to find a pool to
Find the pools.
skate in.
I think it can
Then
be summed
clicked.
up with 3 words. They were gleaming the cube.
Yes.
They were trying to gleam the cube.
okay,
Find a
so
place. They were trying to find a place to gleam the cube.
If only they could find a location to gleam the cube.
I'm going to be a little dense here. I still don't understand the title of the movie.
don't think anybody.
Join the club.
Okay, so when you say they were gleaming the cube, like you have no idea.
Okay. So
Jared's got something there, I can tell.
yeah. So I think very early on, in a Thrasher magazine issue in 1983, it was first said by somebody in there, have you ever gleamed the cube? Gleamed inside a cube or something? Or was that said in the movie?
This movie?
What did they say? Have you ever? I think they were quoting the article.
They allude to gleaming the cube once, but I think the
Yeah,
article
okay.
might have been what you're saying. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think the idea is it's just like when you're in the zone, you're gleaming the cube. When you're in the zone, you're pushing stuff to the limits. It's like type 2 fun. You always say type 2 fun when you're gleaming the cube.
Huh. Well, maybe
You're enjoying pushing the limits and you're in it.
You're on a runway.
Yeah.
There's planes. You're
Did you-
skateboarding. You're gleaming the cube.
Did you find any reference to how it originated?
It from the Thrasher magazine.
No context though. Like that's just where it says it came from.
Just like in the zone. There was no. I think it was just understood in the way that the article was. I don't know. I haven't read the article, but. But as far as the movie goes, yeah, Dave, you love it. Charles, you were gonna go there. You were gonna talk about it.
Yeah, and I remember watching it in the mid '90s. We were excited to hang out and watch it and ready for a fun time. And then it starts off. They're skateboarding. They're at the pool, and then the police show up. And then it turns into this, which it is. It is a noir movie where there's like this death and this mystery that Christian Slater's character is then going to solve. I liked the skateboarding stuff. I wanted more of that. I wanted more of them like hanging out, and you do get that. And then I see how they're like trying to put that in the context of this movie, but just with the whole mystery, I didn't really care about it. And it's even like with, the 80s stuff that we were watching over the past year, like I love like an 80s action flick and just sort of like the idea of them like, setting these arms like over to Vietnam so the like, the war can still continue. It seems really great, but it's this weird thing where... And I think it's kind of like two things that, like Jared, you and Josh already talked about, where you're saying like there is like a light tone to this movie in terms of like the visuals and stuff. It's kind of like a sunny California, could be like a TV movie kind of thing, where you're not really getting it typically like in a noir, it'd be like a bit grittier. And what's kind of interesting to think about is sort of like, so we're at the airport, then we're in the pool, and then like his adopted brother ends up getting murdered in a hotel, and they make it look like he hung himself. So that's quite traumatic to deal with. And then Christian Slater,
within the first 15 minutes.
Yeah. And then Christian Slater's on the case, and he like ends up in that car, and then another guy gets shot. And then like he ends up kind of like in solving the mystery, like, kind of forming a relationship with his brother's girlfriend, and this is probably just like a week or two later since all this like horrific stuff happened in terms of like
she made
this
that
murder that looks like a suicide.
Easily, yeah.
So
we should probably unpack that moment.
But it's like I want to enjoy all of that stuff more than I do, and I liked when he was like sent the skateboard in to like blow up like the place to kind of like show that they're sending arms. So it's like those two. It's like I wanted to have just fun and like hang out with the skateboarders, but there's this mystery that's happening, but I'm not really invested or too curious about it. And it seems like it should all just be like this ludicrous, amazing movie, but it just didn't fully work for me.
So I see everything that you're saying, but I have a couple things just to add that might help you out. When I was watching it, I was able to give in because I immediately started getting this, I don't know, this thing quickly happened to me where Christian Slater talks like Jack Nicholson a lot. And very much so in this movie.
It's kind of like he does this.
His face too. Yeah. And I found that it had this, you said earlier, noir, like neo-noir, like it was a detective show. It was like a total detective story, and it had this weird Chinatown vibe, like Jack Nicholson's Chinatown. And do you remember the movie The Brick with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, directed by the guy that did The Last Jedi?
I remember The Brick.
What's
That's
his
a good
name?
movie.
Ryan.
I've not watched that in a very long time.
Oh, I forgot the director's name. I loved that movie. I went to the theater twice to see that because I just thought it was so unique and so incredible. The music, the acting, the storytelling. It was a detective story, but based in high school. But everybody talked very like, gritty. Like it should have been shot in black and white, but it wasn't. It was really neat. And those Chinatown and Brick, for me, I was able to like accept that this is an 80s movie and I got to just accept it as it comes. It's got that cheesiness to it. Just started watching it in that sense. And another thing I just want to say is for the 80s, for it being one of the first movies to incorporate skateboarding, they were pretty clever in a lot of ways how they incorporated skateboarding. He used that skateboard for everything. It was his sidekick for the whole movie. His skateboard was basically a character of the movie. Like
that's a great point. And I've got two things I want to say. I've never seen a skateboard weaponized so much in my life. He does so many method airs into people's faces.
Like, Biff in Back to the Future 2.
Listen, all due respect to Biff, no one does a method air off of a concrete highway barrier into someone's face like this ever.
I gotta say that
through a window.
Yeah.
Or
for
in
no
someone's
reason
backyard and misses everyone but goes right through a window of a house.
Off a plant pot or something.
It was spectacular though.
And that chase scene was actually quite, I was standing up. I thought I got really into the chase scene. I thought it was awesome, but maybe that's also because I could place myself in his shoes. Going down steep hills like that, I understand the feeling. So, yeah.
If I'm out of place here, I thought it was amazing because back in the day, there was different genres of skateboarding. Like there was really these veins. There was freestyle skateboarding. Rodney Mullen would be, that, and it was a different style skateboard,
like figure skating on a board.
Yeah, exactly. Like acrobatic skateboarding.
Yeah.
And there was downhill skateboarding, which is what you were talking about earlier with the gloves.
Oh
and,
man, have you seen that?
Oh,
in San Francisco, they do this. People are like, I'm sure people have died doing this.
Oh, well, I know, just to speak on, I know in the valley here in the Annapolis Valley, there's a crew that goes down I'm going to say the South Mountain of the Annapolis Valley. You guys are valley friends.
Yeah, that's intense. I used to do a bike ride, a side track. I used to do a bike ride, and part of it would be I'd ride from essentially one mountain to the other, the bottom of one to the top of another. So I'd ride to the North Mountain, and I'd ride the look-off hill. I'd take a break, and then my treat was I would go back down it and see how fast I could go.
That's the hill I think that they go down.
That's the hill they would go down, and I made a rule with myself that I could not touch the brakes until the road was flat.
Nice.
And it's intense. The highest speed I ever reached on it was 77 kilometers an hour.
Very good.
On a mountain bike with road tires on it.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. There's footage you can find of people doing that on Kappa Trail as well.
I was going to say, guys and they use longboards, don't they? Or is there there's obviously a difference
Cruiser
now.
wheels.
You'd call those longboards. Then I assume it was a smaller board, but the style is somewhat similar.
I mean, they obviously wore gloves because they used it to kind of slow themselves down and corner. They probably switched the wheels up, but probably. Back then, the deck itself was probably similar to what.
Well, they have to tighten the trucks up, which they did in the movie, so that they can, because when they go down the hill, they behave like they're on a wave, like cutting to slow themselves down.
Well, that cut thing, like in the movie, he'd almost do a full spin. But I assume that is actually a technique to like slow momentum down to make the turn.
Right.
Because otherwise you would probably just careen right into the...
Yeah. Gleam the cube too much. You're off the side.
Gleam the cube right off the curb.
Broke into that girlfriend's window.
Oh, yeah.
When he was like sneaking into behind the pool.
Couple little power slides.
That was so cool to watch. I was like, man, whoever's doing this is so good.
Yeah.
I just got to say, when he went through the window... And then there was absolutely no reason to have gone through the window. Like he didn't save the day. He didn't do anything. The guy still got shot and he just laid there.
Yeah.
Because he got hurt.
He was hurt. The pain of glass really hurt him.
I was like, what was your strategic move there, bud?
Sometimes when you're gleaming the cube, you don't think that far ahead.
He was gleaming it hard. Yeah.
He was gleaming. But I just back to the skateboarding. I just thought it was made like there was street skateboarding, there was vert skateboarding, there was like the downhill, the freestyle. Like I just was like, wow, Stacy was like, I want to showcase sort of all these different styles, and he did it.
He really did, yeah. Which I noticed that as well.
What was really neat was he kind of had his Kevin Bacon Footloose moment where he was dealing with his brother's death in that warehouse, and where you saw the McTwist, and then all of a sudden it was Rodney Mullen, not Brian.
Yeah.
But it was Brian. But no, it was really.
I really enjoy that because the movie. I was never a skateboarder. I wanted to be. Well, it didn't work out. But the movie also came around the time that skateboarding was transitioning, right? Because you had that early 80s style, which they showed in the movie, which I almost consider it to be like this like form of skateboard breakdancing or something.
Right.
Like they do there's pauses in the moves and these twirls of the boards.
That's Rodney Mullen.
And the circles.
Yep.
And like that's totally Rodney Mullen.
I was thinking about Rodney Mullen in that scene, and at the credit scene where Rodney Mullen was doing his freestyle thing, and it's beautiful to watch. And I remember the Globe skateboard movie. Have you seen that?
No.
It was like this had to be 5-minute long thing of Rodney Mullen just doing his thing on Venice Beach, actually. And it was incredible. And I was like, who's that guy? And then to see him do it in this movie, which was like 15, 20 years earlier, just as incredible to watch. The guy's amazing. Yeah.
Rodney Mullen?
Rodney Mullen is amazing.
And I know Josh, you sent out a text earlier, like there's so many, like Rodney Mullen's story outside of this movie.
Oh, he's a fascinating human.
Incredible. And I think we'll probably hit on that in the near future.
Yeah. Well, and I learned like he started winning competitions for that early 80s sort of, I'll call it dance style. I don't know what the proper
It's like freestyle skating.
freestyle with the spins and all that stuff. He started winning competitions at like 14 and literally won competitions until that style of skateboarding died out and then transitioned and sucked and then moved into, I guess, what you would call street skate.
He calls it
skating.
street skating, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Just-
I'd still call it like old school freestyle skating.
Yeah.
The way he
Yeah.
does it, yeah.
Yeah.
But he invented most of the
Oh, yeah.
street skating's tricks, like the ollie, Rodney Mullen.
Yeah.
The kickflip, Rodney Mullen.
Yeah.
So many things like body varial moves and everything. That's him.
Yeah.
All
Incredible.
over. And he was inspiring Tony Hawk and all the vert guys, the guys on ramps. They started adding all of the stuff. They were like, how do we do an ollie off a vert ramp? And then they
And Tony Hawk, if I'm not mistaken, he started in the same place with this late 70s, early 80s spinning sort of flat parking lot skateboard style from what I've learned about the guy. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it had evolved a bit when
Yeah, he got into the pool stuff and, like the early, like when skateboarding first was like really going and
he didn't really get a name for himself till kind of slightly after the big boom of it all.
I think his father had something to do with a skate park in Del Mar or something.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
so then he just practiced and
Yeah, because Rodney Mullen and Tony Hawk are like 2 years difference in age, so they would have been coming up through the same eras.
and Steve Caballero.
Yeah,
Respect to that skateboard too. I dreamed about that. I wanted a Steve Caballero so bad.
It was funny at the point that I got it. It's just when decks had transitioned, they were much smaller, so it was really kind of like I was kind of bummed out about it at the time. But it was sort of like, well, this is a skateboard I can get, but it's funny just all the stuff that you wish you still had.
Oh man.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Big time. Are there any favorite moments that we haven't talked about yet that you want to mention before we move on?
I'll just mention, and this is maybe this was an 80s thing, but I really liked it, was the entrances and exits through windows, where even at the beginning with Vin, like his girlfriend's like waiting outside the window, and then like he leaves to like go meet up with her, and then with Christian Slater's character, he's going through her window, and then later on him smashing through like a plate glass window. But was that ever actually a thing? Did any of you guys ever like?
Well, is that
have
just a
friends
movie
that
thing?
I always thought it was just a movie thing.
Yeah,
I always wanted to do it. But
I've never.
Someone's knocking on your window or throwing a rock at it. You're like, what? And then you're
The way houses
sneaking out the
work,
window.
the whole house would know if you're climbing out a window. I feel like
Typically, yeah.
because bedrooms are located in the same area of a home, aren't they?
it just doesn't work. Maybe in California with the style of houses they have with like
the ranchers and the
those one level,
the one level
and
bungalows.
the windows you lift up. Here everything's a crank out window and it's on the second story.
Good point. What other? There was another TV show or movie.
Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser.
Yep.
And I almost want to say like Saved by the Bell. Someone came in and out of the window.
Yeah, Screech.
Always, yeah.
Was Screech? Yeah. So, and again, I assume those people lived in California, those three characters, or
I don't know about
think
Doogie
so.
Howser.
I'm not sure. Oh, Doogie.
I don't know.
Doogie.
Did you have another one? You said you might have another one.
And the other one was I just really enjoyed when they're in the Pizza Hut truck.
Oh, my
when
God.
Tony Hawk gathers everyone, they load in
Like
there.
20 people.
Yeah.
There's tiny pickup truck.
Throwing their boards in, and then they're in the chase, and they get turned around, and they're all back in the truck and off on it again. So
Yeah,
that was
there's a
great.
scene at the end where it's like this truck with that big Pizza Hut hat, and they're all just like hanging off the side.
Oh,
coming
yeah,
down
it's
the street.
great.
It's pretty funny.
You want to be in that truck.
That truck is awesome.
They should
for the
have
record.
those trucks still. Like, what a great marketing tool.
Like the mid '80s Nissan.
The restaurant had that roof. The cars have that roof. That's amazing.
restaurant. Hilarious.
Awesome. Yeah. Can I jump in? Because there's
Yeah.
a couple things that we have to talk about. Number one, Stephen Bauer.
Yes, that's right. He was.
Stephen Bauer as the detective.
When
I thought he did a great job.
When I saw his name, I was confusing him with Steven Weber from Wings. I was expecting someone from the sitcom
Interesting.
Wings. And then I was just like, oh, Stephen Bauer from Scarface. So
Yep.
I was perplexed though because he didn't seem like a cop at any moment. He just seemed like an older brother to the.
Well,
the
I
Brian
think that
character.
I think that was sort of the shtick.
But also, like he was like a detective, but he wore jeans and a t-shirt, and he showed up in a cop car in jeans and a t-shirt. It's just.
You know what? There was one. There is one moment where he gets in like a black and white, and I'm like, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it was weird.
He should be
it was
driving a
weird.
Trans Am or something.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
An IROC Z.
He totally should have had an iron.
And then that tiny car that he did the chase in with immediately the door fell off.
Oh,
Yeah.
your door is ajar.
Yeah.
Your door is ajar. I thought that was kind of funny.
So futuristic.
I love it. Yeah. The other thing that I think that I have to talk about is his buddy Yabo's bomb shelter bedroom.
Oh yeah.
That's what I was about to say as well. Go ahead.
Okay, no, I want you to take it then, because I thought it was awesome.
I wanted like a hangout so bad when I was a kid, something like that. If I had seen that when I was whatever age I was then, that would have been my dream.
Would have started digging a hole
And I would have started digging a hole. That was so cool.
Oh,
with a little mini skate ramp.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I think it was like a manhole that, for whatever reason, existed. Well, I guess it must have been a bomb shelter, like some
It
sort
had
of
to have been a bomb
survivor shelter.
Yeah.
But my favorite scene was when he woke the guy up in the middle of the night who was sleeping in this thing.
Yeah.
And has
That's his
this
room.
like teenagers like it's like the luthier's workshop of skateboarding.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need a custom board. And they're going through it. He wakes him up and it's the middle of the night. He builds him this custom board and he slips on a wheel. And he's like, no, man. He's like, I need the black ones.
That's right.
You don't want those for street riding. Those are fast. And then it goes to the scene. He's like, I need fast.
I need fast. The diamond plate grip tape.
Yeah. Oh
I
man.
was like, that'd be slippery. Maybe.
I think that board was like the arc
Yeah.
to
Right.
like skateboarders at the time,
Excalibur.
but it looked so bad.
Well, they made him look, he looked like, there's a superhero now that looked like, he put on all this gear and he put on the helmet and had those lines on it. And he literally looked like a Marvel character now.
Okay.
And like they really tried to play him. I noticed it, like the transition of where he sort of became this sort of skateboard superhero for a second.
I thought it was cool. I thought he did a good job. I think it was his first really big starring role. I think it was. I mean, I think he was in he was in Heathers before this, I believe, Christian Slater, but then this was like his big break.
Gleaming the Cube and Face Off.
Yeah.
Face Off. Yep.
The other, I'll say one more thing about the
He wasn't in
movie.
Face Off.
Yeah, he was. Pretty sure. Wasn't he?
no.
No, he was in Broken Arrow with.
You're thinking Nicolas
Broken
Cage?
Arrow.
Yeah, you're right. I retract that. I thought it was Face Off. It was Broken Arrow.
Is that John Travolta in
yeah.
Broken Arrow? Okay.
Yeah.
And then
But John Travolta was in Face Off as well, but with
both
Nicolas
directed
Cage.
by John
Classic.
Woo. So it
That's
all,
right.
it all comes together.
The last thing I'll say is that I love, as you said, with going through windows was an 80s thing. Grabbing a hold of a vehicle with a skateboard was a total 80s thing. And there's a lot of movies where guys were riding.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Holding
Back to the
onto a
Future.
vehicle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back to
Like
the
Back
Future.
to the Future, he's holding on to the back of a pickup truck. In this movie, he rode with multiple vehicles, I think, and then a Corvette at the end doing like 120 kilometers an hour
Well, that's.
with these black wheels. of
I'm glad you
course.
brought that up. I was going to bring this up later, or earlier rather. But could you imagine being on a skateboard, moving that fast, holding a vehicle? There's rocks. There's
And guys on
potholes.
motorcycles trying to chase you down.
Yeah, there it is.
That's true. Also, you'd want to have your trucks pretty tight.
Oh, yeah. Tighter.
You'd really want to clamp down on the trucks because the speed wobbles would be immense.
I know that this is important to you, Dave.
Yes.
What is your favorite quote from Gleaming the Cube?
Okay, well, there's many, but the one that has always stuck out in my mind is sort of like his half of the bedroom is exactly like what I styled my bedroom after. Posters, like just ripped out everything from skateboard magazines, taped to the wall. My parents probably hated me. Just taped on there, and he's on his bed listening to his music. I don't know who it is, suicidal tendencies, or he's teenage angst personified, and he's in a conversation with his brother before he falls prey to a international espionage and arms struggle. And
jeez.
However, he's like, they're having this like deep conversation about like kind of the future and like adults and all this stuff, and he's like, his brother's basically like, so why are you so angry, or what's your deal? Why don't you trust adults? And Christian Slater, in that Jack Nicholson voice, which you talked about earlier, is just like, let's just say adults are predictable. And it's
Adults are predictable.
It's just the way he says it. For some reason, that soundbite has stuck with me forever, because it's just kind of like, adults. It's just that I got to go skate because no one understands me kind of thing. Anyways, that for some reason sticks in my mind.
Nice.
Yep.
Charles, do you have a favorite quote or something that stuck with you?
The only well, I found it funny at the time, but the only thing that sticks out to me is they're up in the airplane. They're like trying to scope out a pool to skate in, and Tony Hawk's character is saying, "Hey, that's my Pizza Hut."
Well, because they're all saying, "That's my house. That's my house. That's my Pizza Hut."
I love that.
Tony Hawk was really good in this movie. They made him very funny.
I like his Pizza Hut visor on backwards with his like blonde hair coming out. It's just styled
at
perfectly.
The end when they were the whole skate gang. Did you notice that all their knee pads were on their ankles?
Yeah, they should have been more prepared.
It's like,
yeah,
it was so funny. And here they all are, like this team of like skaters, and they're all wearing pads.
Yeah,
it was so.
It was pretty funny.
Thoughtful. Do you have a quote that you?
I don't have a quote, but I have a distinct scene when he changed the way he dressed.
Oh yeah,
and then he just shows up the next day and he's wearing like khakis and this sweater.
It looked like he had a haircut too.
Well, it showed him cutting his hair himself, but then his hair was the same length. I was like, okay.
He combed her down.
But anyway, the funny part was all of a sudden he has a khaki pants and a sweater on. And they thought to really transition his character, now he would ride a white mountain bike, and that would make him really straight edge and nerdy. And I don't know why. It just seemed absurd to me that
80s tropes.
Their way to make him seem awkward was to put him on a bicycle.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's wrong with a bicycle?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
It did make him stick out in the scene, though, I got to say. So, but it was funny.
I have a couple funny quotes. My favorite was when that guy that killed his brother, right before he was about to get killed himself, he goes, "Don't give me a jerk off hand job."
Oh, yeah. I do remember that.
I was like,
what?
And what was the other one? Right away, like Christian Slater's character Brian says to the cops after they got busted because one of the kids got like hurt really bad in the pool. Like this was in the first like 5 minutes. He goes, "If my dog had a face like yours, I'd shave his ass and teach him to walk backwards."
Oh man.
Like,
yeah.
And then one more was like just really funny. He's like getting really like close with Vin's girlfriend. They're like having this really like romantic moment, like next to a fire, I think, at her house. And he just goes, "Can I ask you can I ask you something personal?" She's like, "Sure." "Where's the bathroom?"
What?
Like, I just thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I have a question. So with Ven's girlfriend there, so let's say this takes place over the matter of a week, 2 weeks maximum, probably.
It was a big week.
Or it was a big week. So her boyfriend commits suicide, she thinks. Turns out he's been murdered, and she ends up kind of in a relationship with his brother, and her father is murdered as well after he crashed through the the window. How do you think she's holding up? And do you think their relationship? Do you think that worked out for them?
It's
Well,
fine
she
because
seemed-
he said he'd take her to school. Like they'd go together.
Yeah,
Wait,
she
they'll-
really didn't seem too upset and was ready for a new relationship after a week. So
that's
yeah.
ready to move on.
Very resilient. Yes.
One might say she's gleaming the cube.
She was gleaming something, yeah.
In the zone of school.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tough. It was a tough week.
They process things so quickly when they're young.
Yeah, time flies.
And what's happening at the end with Christian Slater and Stephen Bauer? Are they at his brother's grave?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And then what do they say? What does he say at the end? Or there's like a cheesy joke or something. I can't remember.
And then a great song comes on.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
great.
you're my
80s.
brother. Like, it's very explicit. Like, this is now your brother, Stephen Bauer.
Wow.
I think I need to rewatch this again. The more we talk about it, the
It's
more
interesting.
the more
We're
I'm
all going to
enjoying
watch
it.
this many more
I
times.
think I should watch it again. I watched it, and as I said, the story accelerated so quickly at the start.
Yeah.
I missed a lot of things. And this is not new. There's other 80s films I do find they escalate so quickly. I'll be like, wait, what? How'd that happen?
How did
Why'd
we get
that
here?
happen?
You're not, because even like haven't seen it before. I was sort of like, what? He's
Yeah.
murdered.
Well, with this one, he did some calculations, and then he's breaking into a facility, and then he's in a hotel room, and they're putting a towel around his neck.
Yep.
And people go outside, and they come back in, and he's dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the guy says, "I've done this before. That's never happened." I'm like,
pretty
what do you
dark stuff.
mean?
What do you mean you've done this before?
And then the next scene is a cleaning lady going in, and here's poor little Kevin hanging in the bathroom or whatever. What was his name?
Vin. Yep.
Yeah. I think that there's this thing you got to do when you watch a movie from the 80s is you just got to accept the world that the movie's in a little bit. You know what I mean? You got to like
Yeah, you just got to drink
let
the
it
Kool-Aid.
go and have fun with it and not
I get it, but
I
like,
don't know.
a murder, smothering that goes wrong and that you
Yeah.
make look like a hanging is some dark stuff.
yeah.
I also
But
love
they
that-
played off very like it was lightly played off though.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
what it is. Like, I agree with you on the 80s thing, and you just kind of let it go, and you enjoy it.
Enjoy the story.
But this movie escalated very quickly.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
I don't
did
think it
Escape from New
represents
York.
all 80s movies,
Yeah.
because I enjoyed that accelerated timeline as part of enjoying an 80s film. And this one, I watched it. I was like, huh? What?
Well, I wonder
This
if some
already? What?
I wonder if
Yeah.
some of it got lost on the cutting room floor too.
And honestly, like you
Oh,
don't really
probably, yeah.
expect like a kid or a teenager to get, like, if you're watching something like Heathers, which is like a really dark movie, you
expect
you
more of that.
understand like the murder in that, but with this, you kind of don't expect like, oh, whoa, his brother's dead.
Yeah, you just can't pull at that thread of, reasonable rationality. There's another part where, Brian's like, I've got my team too, meaning like,
Right.
you've got police and they're going to meet us at this location and we're going to get the bad guy. Well, I've got my skateboard buddies and
They
I'm
come
going to
over
call
the-
them up. So again, you can't pull these threads, but it's like he called his buddies up on
Yeah.
a payphone. Well, that's not 100%. Like,
No.
you can't trust that with all that's happening. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got this is a major crime we're trying to solve here.
Yeah.
And then to have them come to the right hill, that car chase could have gone anywhere.
That was epic when they all came over the hill.
When they come over the hill with the music, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
yep, here we go.
With the Pizza Hut truck behind them. It was so good.
Yeah.
I loved that truck.
It was so
That was
funny.
like the mid 80s Nissans. They were just tiny, and they're just
Beautiful.
They're really cool.
Yeah, super cool.
Bright red.
Oh yeah.
So this reminds me of watching movies with, I remember I saw this movie I really enjoyed in the theater and I told people about it. And then I think it was like a scary movie and I told some people about it and then they went to go see it and then they made fun of me because they thought it was terrible. But when I went to go see it, I saw it with a group of people, and we were in a certain mind frame watching it, and we knew what we were getting into, and we were watching this silly movie, and it had jump scares in it. It was like a haunted house movie. Liam Neeson was in it. I don't know. I thought it was hilarious, like, because the guy I was sitting next to, every time he'd jump, he'd like grab my arm and like scare the crap out of me.
Was it Dracula Dead and Loving It?
No.
Great
it was
film.
Haunted House on Haunting Hill. I don't know. And I mean, it wasn't a great movie, but I was like, I told the guys this would be funny, and they went to see it, and they were like, "You're an idiot. This is not a good movie." So, you know, you got to watch things with a grain of salt and accept them for as they are sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And with that said, after discussing it as a group, maybe your opinions have changed, maybe they've gotten lesser or grown about Gleaming the Cube.
I definitely want to watch it again, because I think there's certain things I wasn't appreciating about it.
My last question before we move on to our surf tips is, how many sharkadoodles would you give Gleaming the Cube?
I think I would give it 7 sharkadoodles out of 10.
Okay.
Sharkadoodle-doos.
Oh, that's a lot coming from you. What?
No, I'd agree with that statement.
I'm going to give it 5 Sharkadoodle-doos.
5. Okay. David?
I'm gonna say 8.5 sharkadoodle-doos out of 10.
Jared,
I'm at a
how
hard-
many sharkadoodle-doos would you give it?
I'm at a hard 8. 8 sharkadoos. Okay, let's move on.
Sharkadoodle.
Nova Kooks. Surf tips.
So, to talk about this week's surf tip, we actually had a question from Antonia, who goes by AH Photography on Instagram. It was based on localism, and I'm going to just read her message. She writes, I was telling a friend who is Nova Scotia born and raised about the podcast. Thank you. And said that surfing would be cool to try. They told me to be careful where I try it because not all surfers welcome beginners at quote-unquote their beaches, and that new surfers, or quote-unquote from away surfers, have had their tires slashed at some beaches. Is there any truth to this? Are some surfers hostile towards beginners? Other surfers encroaching on their quote-unquote their beaches? Thank you. This was a great question, and I hope you guys are game to discuss this.
We can tackle it.
Yes.
Let's do it.
I've always felt bad about slashing tires at the beach. Just kidding.
Josh, you got to stop it.
Sorry.
So, really quickly, we talked about some of the beginner beaches in an earlier Nova Kooks episode, the Nova Scotia beaches episode. I feel like that was an early episode last season. And we talked about like some of the greatest beaches for a beginner or a visiting surfer to come check out. Good family beaches, lots of good facilities. But yeah, for a surfer that's from away or from a tourist surfer that may not know, we talked about this in the Hawaii episode a little bit about, how I was a tourist, and some of the locals, were kind to me to tell me to get lost.
To tell you you're going to die.
You could die here. So that's kind of a piece of this, is that there's sort of two pieces to this, where there's safety, but also you got to respect that this is their backyard, and it goes back to like playground days where there's one swing at the playground, it's mine. And yeah, that exists as adults just the same as it does kids. You'd like to hope that this sort of stuff doesn't happen, but I've heard the same rumors. When I first started surfing, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I remember being at my favorite beach break today, not realizing it would become that, in Seaforth. And there's a point at Seaforth, and I was told by one of the surfers, surf here, not there. You'll get your tires slashed if you park down that road a bit. And I heard that has happened, and it's because, I don't know, Not that all surfers are like this, but some people have issues. Those people are in every sport. Those people are in every place of business. Everywhere you go, you're going to find somebody that's got a chip on their shoulder about something. So
I'm not totally aware of it. I know there's all kinds of conversations about don't surf there if you're new or not very good or whatever. And I guess my advice would be if you can rent a board there or near, you're probably fine.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But there is that whole side of like a surfer from away that wants to try out the better spots, like someone who's capable of doing it, and maybe the people don't realize that that person can do it. And
that's pretty, I'd agree with that. But that's also, I mean, surfing is, I feel, has changed a lot in Nova Scotia. Even having surfed this summer, there were license plates from everywhere.
Yeah.
At every spot. So, well, I mean, more so like Lawrencetown, there were some from Quebec, Martinique, there were license plate from different places. But if you're from away and you haven't surfed before and you're just trying to have fun, like you want to go to Martinique or Lawrencetown anyway.
Yeah. They're fun places to be.
Yeah, I think if you go to any of the beach breaks, and like especially if they're like renting boards, like I don't think you have, I think it's perfectly safe. You don't have anything to worry about in that regard. And I guess, maybe sometimes you hear a story and then that, might get blown out of proportion, or people expect that that's the norm. But I think it's just a matter of like, if you're starting out, then go to a beach break. And then even if it's like, if you want to check out one of the point breaks, if it's kind of just being mindful, knowing your limits and kind of being aware of the people around you, saying hello and respecting the lineup. But it's also, if it's like a big day, it's like really great conditions. Like I think people probably get a bit more territorial about their waves on days like those. If you're not really up for those spots, then it's probably best to stay away.
That's true. Well, I would say as a collective though, I've never, and we've surfed quite a few spots in Nova Scotia, I would probably offer. I've never seen a vehicle with the tires slashed. So
we also go at like 6 a.m. though.
As a collective, we go at all different times. I was
right.
surf in the afternoon sometimes. I'll surf midday on a Saturday. You're going all kinds of times.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think there's probably stuff like that happens, but I would also say that probably stuff like that happens for a reason. I'm not saying it's a good reason.
No.
Like they might be blocking someone's driveway lane. They might be parking someone in. Like I'm not saying that hasn't happened, but I guess what I'll say is I'll stick to the positive side. Like, if you go out and you give people a smile and a nod and hello and you're surfing within your limits, you're not just going out to, on a 10-foot day, you're not going out and getting in the way of all kinds of people who have worked at this for decades and have surfed places in decades, and you're giving giving lots and watching and taking your turn, then I don't think these sorts of things are going to happen typically. Or if you reach out and say, hey, I'm kind of figuring this out, or, just be human. And I think people will be human with you. And again, like you said, Jared, there's strange people in every occupation doing any sport. So you're going to run into different people anywhere. And if you want to surf, go surf, but just, be safe and surf in your limits and know where to go.
Just to extend on that point, if you're conscientious enough to ask the question, and I've forgotten the individual's name that asked the question. Antonia, I don't think you're going to be causing any problems to get your tires slashed. You seem like a good person, so safe to say you'll be fine.
Yeah. It also reminds me, I think I mentioned it in an earlier podcast, from a Surfer's Journal magazine that I read, an article actually on the plane on the way to LA about LA, talking about how post-pandemic, how the influx of surfers has really, people have been getting outside more, and the sport has had a huge surge. Even here locally, it's tripled since we all began as far as interest, and a lot of the beaches the lineups are massive now, and localism has had to kind of change with it, where people, either be welcoming or forget it. You're outmatched now. There's too many people. So you're in the lineup. If it's your wave, it's your wave. Go for it. If you can get it, go get it. And I noticed this in Hawaii as well. People were just going for the wave that they could go for. If someone else got it, other people would just back down, even if they were already up on the board. And it would say good for you in the end. So
I have one last point, not to keep going on about this, but I have a few friends outside of our collective here that also surf and are well established in surfing and have done it for a very, very long time. And in conversations with them, they're often not going out unless it's really good conditions. And if you're a beginner and you're checking out all these different locations, you're probably not going to be on the same waves on the same days anyway. Because I've noticed as it's become more popular, Lawrencetown and Martinique will be packed on days that I'll have a look and I'll think, I don't think I'm going to go out today. And I'm not even that great of a surfer. But someone that's just starting out and exploring the beaches, they'll go out on any day. It's just, they're going to have fun. And so there's also a good probability or a good chance that you're not going to get in the way of somebody that's going to be upset at you anyway if you're doing something foolish because you're a kook. Yeah.
It's all about fun. Yeah. And you're not going to get out on a wave that you can't do. And
yeah, like you're not going out on a 6 foot day. Yep. You're going out on a 1.
Yeah, and if you're where you belong as far as skill, you'll be accepted, I'm sure.
There is that one break, though, that only the people that are arms dealers surf. Yes. And you definitely want to stay away from that one.
Don't go there.
Yeah.
All right.
I heard about one where I think it's high in selenium and bank robbers only serve at that one.
Right?
Yeah. And then there's the point where
movies
they
have
go
taught us anything.
If we've learned one thing,
yep.
I think there was titanium, selenium, carnauba wax.
Oh God! Don't surf the carnauba wave wax. That's wave. Never mind. I ruined the joke.
Oh,
the carnauba wave wax. What does that even mean?
Hey, who knows?
Carnauba.
You'll know when you're there.
It's that time again for the final question from Charles.
This is Charles.
This week's question. When you were a child, did you get excited when a franchise restaurant was opening in your town? Is there a particular one you remember?
This is from the Pizza Hut.
And how do you feel about that now?
What opened in the valley?
Well, Pizza Hut.
I wasn't excited about that.
Yeah, Pizza Hut and was Taco Bell with it at first?
We never got a Taco Bell.
Coldbrook
got a Taco Bell.
Got a Taco Bell. But Pizza Hut came with... KFC went into the same place?
KFC used to be where...
Yeah, but then it moved with Pizza Hut.
Man.
Okay, you guys think about it. I'm going to jump in here. So the town that I grew up in, there was no fast food restaurants. There was maybe one family-style restaurant. However, nearby was the metropolis of Guelph, Ontario. And this brand new restaurant opened up that to this day is mind-blowing. Arby's. Arby's opened up. Word of Arby's opening up in my small town of Hillsburg was like it went through like Thrasher magazine. Like everyone, you know what I mean? Like there's one in town.
You know what I mean? I know what you mean. I've had Arby's before.
You know what I'm talking about?
It goes through you like a Thrasher magazine.
And it's the consensus greatest fast food restaurant that we know of. I mean, we all know that. So, anyways, we heard about these roast beef sandwiches that they were
These legendary.
with the horsey sauce and their newfangled Arby's
Was it called
sauce.
horsey sauce? Because I remember the commercial and they'd be drizzling this sauce on.
Surely you jest. You know it was called horsey sauce because you love it. Anyway, they had curly fries and Pepsi products.
Oh,
So we made the trek 30 minutes away. My mom, my dad, my brother, and I.
we packed
and
a lunch
we
and got in the car.
feasted on Arby's. And that to us was mind-blowing.
Well, that was like the franchise beef dip sandwich. Like,
It was genius then, and it's genius now.
I got to say,
All listeners would agree.
when you said Pepsi fountain pop, it's like, I hear you.
You know what?
It's just, it hits different.
It's like you're gleaming the cube.
Oh,
man.
you gleam it hard on a
I know you're
fountain
being
pop
funny
Pepsi.
because Arby's is one of the most polarizing, in conversations of favorite food restaurants.
It is.
Oddly enough, sorry, you go ahead.
I have to ask because I know, David, that you spend a lot of time in the South Shore. Is this purely motivated by the only Arby's being in Bridgewater, where it's sort of like, we could go away for a bit, and there's Arby's along the way?
It's an interesting connection, Charles. It's a very interesting connection.
Do you go every time?
Absolutely.
I love it.
You do not drive by the town of Bridgewater without making it to Arby's.
Oh,
Fair
man.
enough.
We were
And our listeners agree.
Oddly enough, the Arby's in the valley where Jared and I are from didn't survive.
didn't even survive in the city.
The Arby's in Bridgewater is the only Arby's in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Odd and interesting on that fact. Bridgewater and then Chester's very close to Bridgewater, right?
Relatively, yeah.
Chester has still the only surviving Big Red's Pizza,
That's right.
which is also so interesting. There's obviously a phenomenon
I'm
in
salivating.
that area
I'm salivating.
because Big Red's didn't last either. Yeah.
There's a certain palate when you live in that. Would that wouldn't quite be the South Shore? Or
Maybe,
you're
yeah.
heading toward that
This
way.
summer I went into that Arby's, and
Of course you did.
yes, I did. And it was this weird day where the streets were like silent, and we didn't understand what was going on. There was a man on the run, and there were signs posted in all the restaurants that police had put up, wanted posters basically of this guy that was on the run. If you see this man, and the people at Arby's were like, "Yeah, we're closing soon. So what do you want? Quick!" It's just like, what is happening? Yeah,
Last meal, head to Arby's.
I mean, yeah.
it was.
There's only one.
It made me feel like it was my last meal.
Doing
for a
her
minute.
right.
I would say when we were just getting out of high school, a restaurant opened up in our area, Josh, A&W. And I remember I hadn't had A&W before, I don't believe, and had their... Oh, no, that's not true, because
No.
we had it in the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah.
but when they moved into this new location...
They changed their ways.
I fell in love with the matzo burger combo.
Well, it was the new era A&W where they kind of like had their, what do you call that? Free range eggs and like the new era A&W that
and
came
the
out.
fries were real fries and and the that matzo burger combo. Ooh.
That's a good burger.
Yeah, with
That's
the
a
root
good
beer
burger.
and those fries. That's a good little.
That's a good little meal.
Yeah.
I don't remember getting excited about a restaurant opening, but I will say I used to get excited to go as a really young child to Pizza Delight. And there's two reasons. The pizza was awesome, but they would bring it out on that little stand with the candle under it.
Oh,
and I just got really excited when they'd plop that sucker down and you knew like great things were about to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing was we would go, it was like a once a year thing, and we'd meet up with this group of friends of my parents with their kids, and we would order pitchers of Pepsi.
Oh,
wow.
pictures of
And like, even now I feel the sensation of like just like God on his throne. Like, and then they'd put the pizza on that stand and it was massive, and you'd have this endless jug of pop.
Yeah. I remember the plastic just connecting. I remember
It's making me salivate right
the
now.
plastic
The red.
cups from Pizza Hut.
The red
Oh,
plastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And getting a jug of now I can't remember if Pizza Hut was Coke or Pepsi. I want to say Pepsi.
I think
it was
Coke.
Pepsi. No,
I don't
Pizza
know.
Hut, I'm
I
pretty
really don't
sure.
know.
Because
I just remember
KFC
those
was
cups.
Pepsi.
Okay, yeah.
And the style of the roof and just the motif. And you're just like,
Yeah.
again, something big's going to happen here.
Oh, my God.
They had the stuffed crust.
Oh, and they had this other, it was a certain type of meat they put on it and it would curl up on the edges. Might have been ham. And
This
I'm not
is-
even a big
this is
ham
Pizza
person,
Delight?
but this Pizza Delight,
is Pizza Delight.
they did it right.
Yeah.
It was, and I'll throw it back for our global listeners that will come to Nova Scotia and to the great Annapolis Valley. But Jared, this was when Pizza Delight was just down from Henny Penny's.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah. It
Oh,
was in
yeah.
the same complex. And
Yeah.
Was that a restaurant?
No,
Henny
that was a
Penny's is a little farm market.
Oh.
Grocers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the credit union, you know what? Speaking of skateboarding, when Pizza Delight was there in that spot, I used to, there was a gap and I used to skateboard and I would go down that gap and I feel like I was one of the youngest that did it. And there were all the older skaters would be like, check this little guy out. And I would like crush that gap. It was awesome.
Jared was a little kid
I
from
think I
mid 90s.
Yeah. Well, I was like the youngest in that group of people, and I think I still have rocks from falling from trying to stick that trick. Well, just ollieing.
Then you'd head in for a pop and
Man, we should go to Pizza Delight.
pizza.
Does it still exist?
It still exists, but I don't know if there is any in.
I think it's like sporadic funny towns.
Yeah.
Sorry to everyone who
There's
lives
one
in a
in.
sporadic.
There's still one in the board. There's still one in the boardwalk in PEI in Cavendish. I don't know if there's any in Nova Scotia. There
I
may
think
be
like
one in
New Glasgow
Bears
has
Lake,
one.
maybe.
Antigonish. I don't know, and
I'm
I'm not saying
looking
those
it
are
up right
weird,
now.
funny
Do you
towns.
remember as an end of the year gift we got Pizza Delight gift
I'm
cards?
still trying to use it.
I don't know where to use it.
I don't know where to go.
There's a Pizza Delight at 209 Chain Lake Drive in Halifax.
Yes.
That's
and it's
Bears
open
Lake.
until 9 p.m.
Well, it's been fun talking.
Talk to you
Let's
later.
shut this thing down.
We got 5 minutes. Let's go.
Shut her down.
So for me, I grew up near Sydney in Cape Breton, which is technically a city. So there would have been some franchise restaurants in there, and that always felt cool to me as a little kid. But I was from this small village between Sydney and Glace Bay called Reserve Mine. So once McDonald's came to Glace Bay, that was kind of like a big deal. It was like the future has arrived. We're part of the world. So that was that was sad but exciting. And then I remember when Tim Hortons started like popping up everywhere, and then we got one
Everywhere.
in my little village that's still there. But I just remember how excited everyone was that we were getting a Tim Hortons, like my family, and I was excited because I'd be able to get Timbits and whatnot. But it's kind of amazing how much joy and excitement that would bring, and now we just kind of take these things for granted.
I used to love going to Tim Hortons with my grandpa. He'd buy me a Boston cream and a peach drink.
Oh,
Man,
they used
that
to
is
have
a-
some serious peach fountain drink,
That
and
stuff
then they
would
changed it.
That stuff would leave a scum in your mouth that was like an inch thick.
Oh yeah.
Oh my
Nostalgia.
God. I
We're
can see you as a
living.
little child just like spitting up phlegm after having a Boston cream and a peach
Maybe.
drink.
Maybe.
That was good though.
Yeah.
They used to have massive cookies at Tim Hortons. Do you remember those?
Oh yeah.
Actually, this is a funny story. Then we'll end this. I haven't had a donut in a while, but like I'll still get one on occasion. And every once in a while, it will have the taste and scent of cigarette smoke, which is what I remember Tim Hortons to have as a child.
Oh yeah.
And that was part of the flavor.
Oh yeah.
And it just throws me right back. I'm like, oh, that's a good donut.
now
You just threw me back to when I worked at Tim Hortons.
donut.
Like a chocolate glaze with a little hint of cigarette smoke on
Watch
it.
out.
That's a treat right there.
So thanks for that question, Charles. Don't forget to send any surf or eccentric questions for Charles to read during this part of the show. Yeah, message us on Instagram or send us an email at novakooks@gmail.com and give us a question for Charles to read. They're always appreciated. Awesome. We've been the Nova Kooks. Thank you. I've been Jared.
I've been David.
Charles.
Still Josh.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's listen. Be sure to give us some love on Instagram and keep your ears peeled for the next episode wherever you get your podcasts.